Hi, it's Anna. Welcome back to Books on the Go. I'm here with a book haul and it's quite a large one, so I'll try to speed through these. But these are the books I received or bought in late December, early January. And the first one is Elizabeth Strout, Tell Me Everything, which I received for my birthday as a gift. I love Elizabeth Strout. I had not read this one, even though it's been out for a while, but I knew I wanted to. It was one of those books that I know that I'll read it, I just don't know when I'll get to it. This is a continuation of both the Olive Kitteridge series and the Lucy Barton series. And I've read all of the Olive Kitteridge, and I don't know if I've read all of the Lucy Barton, but it doesn't matter if you haven't read those books. Set in Maine, in the small town on the coast, and in this book, Olive Kitteridge is in her 90s. I think she might be 91, and she's in a home and she meets Lucy Barton. So Lucy comes because she hears Lucy's a writer and she hears that Olive Kitteridge has a story to tell her. So a few of the chapters are Lucy visiting Olive and Olive telling her a story, or vice versa. They start telling each other stories. I've actually read it already because I took it on holidays with me, and it's just delightful. It was really interesting. There was an interview recently with Charlotte Wood, which she posted something on Instagram, and she really captured what makes Elizabeth Strout so compelling. And it was something to do with, I think her phrase was, the intimacy of the voice. And it feels like it's real people or a real story. And how she does that, I don't know, but that's one of the things that I love about it. The characters feel really real. I love the setting. I love the small details that she picks up on and the dramas from ordinary lives that she manages to extract, and it just is really propulsive, even though it's not necessarily plot driven. It's really compelling. You keep wanting to turn the page and you want to be in the company of the characters. I think that's the warmth as well that she brings to it. So highly recommend Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. I do you don't have to read those books in order, but I do recommend, if you haven't read them, to go back and start with Olive Kitteridge. And also I think My Name is Lucy Barton might be the first Lucy Barton one. Let me know if you've read this one, what you thought. And the next one, this was also a birthday gift from a dear friend of mine who loves Pedro Almodòvar films. And this is Pedro Almodòvar, The Last Dream. And it's a collection of stories. And he says, I think in the blurb, he says, he didn't want to write fiction, and then he didn't want to write a memoir. I think it was one or the other people have been telling him to write, and he didn't want to do that. So these are just stories, but he said it really shows you how intertwined his work is between memories and real life and made up and creative fiction, and how he doesn't necessarily distinguish between them. So I'm really intrigued. I haven't read this yet, but I do love his films as well. So let me know if you've read this one, The Last Dream. And then a book that I've been wanting to read for ages, Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I've really enjoyed most of her books. I didn't read The Dutch House. It just, for some reason, didn't appeal to me. And so I've had a little break from Ann Patchett, but everyone was raving about Tom Lake, and it sounds like one of those comfort reads. It's on a lot of people's lists for escape reads or comfort reads, and books that you can sit down with a cup of tea and be cozy with and won't fail you. So I hope that is the case. Let me know. I've heard one or two people have said they didn't get on with it, so that's even more intriguing. But I don't even know the premise. I'll have to put my glasses on. But it's spring, and Lara's 3 grown daughters have returned to the family orchard. While picking cherries, they beg their mother to tell them the one story they've always longed to hear, the film star with whom she shared a stage and a romance years before. Interesting. It's a meditation on youthful love, married love, and the lives parents lead before their children are born. Hopeful and elegiac. I know what it means. I'd never really have to pronounce it. And it explores what it means to be happy even when the world is falling apart. A reminder to cherish the good things in life. Deeply satisfying. That's Good Weekend. And Elle says Patchett always delivers. Primer says, how does Patchett do it? A near perfect novel. And of course it's been an international bestseller. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm intrigued. Tell me what you think if you've read Tom Lake, which most people have. I'm late to this one. Now, this is one that Anthony Nocera recommended, An Exciting and Vivid Inner Life by Dalla Rosa, who's an Australian author, but he's been published in the Paris Review and Granta and won Sunday Times Short Story Award. And Anthony Nocera recommended his writing. These are short stories. I don't know much more about it, but it's really exciting to discover a new author. And I'm hoping, because he's written a lot of these award-winning or highly regarded short stories, and there are lots of blurbs, including Christian Cholkas, one of my other favourite writers, has praised this book, and I'm hoping perhaps he has a novel coming as well, or maybe another volume of stories, but I will tackle these first. I can't tell you much more. Yes, whether working in food service or in high-end retail, lit by a laptop in a sex chat or by the camera of an acclaimed film director, sharing a dangerous apartment in the city, a rooming house in China, or a vacation rental in Mallorca, the protagonists of the 10 stories navigate the spaces between aspiration and delusion, ambition and aimlessness, the curated profile and the unreliable body. So it sounds really good. Lives in late-stage capitalism, globalization and its false promise, masterpieces of regret, futility and tenderness, dripping with acuity, irony and wit. And he's been compared with Ottessa Moshfegh, who I haven't read and I haven't been tempted to read, but of course has a huge following, and the legendary Lucia Berlin. He's a masterful observer. So I am very excited for this, An Exciting and Vivid Inner Life. I'll report back. Now, a change of pace, Wildland, A Journey Through a Divided Country by Evan Osnos. So Evan Osnos wrote a book called Age of Ambition, which was about chasing fortune in modern-day China, and he spent a lot of time in China, and it was a really interesting book. And this has come out about, he's gone back to America, he's American, he's gone back to America, and he wanted to understand what was happening in the political climate and in the country, and he's chosen, I think, 3 different regions and done a deep dive into those areas. He spent 6 years going through looking at the lives of everyday Americans, and he goes to, it doesn't say the 3 regions that he goes to, but I had a feeling I read one of them was West Virginia, for example, and I can't remember the other 2. But anyhow, I'll let you know once I've read it. That is Wildland. So I'll see how I go with that one. America's in an interesting place, interesting times. So this might be enlightening as to at least how it got to where it is now. So I'll let you know. Another one which I've been waiting for, and I bought this when I saw that it had come out, is Small Rain by Garth Greenwell. And I loved his earlier books. I think What Belongs to You might have been short, was it short stories or a novel, and Cleanness. And I can't even tell you, I think Cleanness was a relationship, and it was really intimate and beautifully observed, and I think we did it on the podcast. And this one, Small Rain, is his latest novel, and a poet's life is turned inside out by a sudden wrenching pain, and eventually he goes to the ICU, he's confined to bed. He struggles to understand what is happening, and he's at the mercy of the healthcare system. And so it's a novel about illness. It shows poetry, music, memory and care are thrown into sharp relief. It's interesting. So Alice Wynne says, terrifying, soaringly philosophic, Small Rain is fundamentally about the beauty of life. Sigrid Nunez, who I really like her work, compassion, that supreme quality in a fiction writer, is a main source of Greenwell's power. So it doesn't sound like a light read, and being about illness is, I'm sure that will put some readers off. Virginia Woolf once wrote, I remember her writing that why aren't there more books about illness? Because we're all affected by it, And it seemed odd to her that there are not more books about people who are sick or from that point of view. So here we go, Virginia. That sounds like Garth Greenwell's latest. So I'll see how I go with this one. But I certainly have enjoyed his earlier work, so I have high hopes. That's Small Rain. And then a series I had not heard of, but Kate Slott over at the Book Club Review podcast put me onto this, the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower. And I've actually got, because they're so slim, the first 3 volumes, and they're set in, I had never heard of them. She heard of them through Sean Mooney. So hello, Sean, as well, if you're watching. I'm really intrigued to know how people are finding out about these, because I think they're self-published as well. But they're set in London, somewhere near Primrose Hill, and it's literally it's in the 1800s, maybe is it 1850s? I can't remember. But it's Emma Lyon, who's orphaned, and she goes back to the house that she's inheriting, but it's currently under the care of her cousin, they don't get along, cousin Archibald, and that's all I really know. I have started, but that's as far as I've really got to so far. Kate raves about them, and they seem to be this huge hit, at least in America, unbeknownst to me until recently. I'm finding them very easy, very engaging, and I think there's been a comparison with Jane Austen, and I get that, and Kate mentioned Georgette Heyer, so they're light and quite witty, but I'm not quite getting the narrative tension or the propulsion as yet. They're quite scattered, and from listening to Beth Brower speak, it does seem like she said, I wanted to do something really like a slim novella, and I thought, why not have a diary of some characters that I'd already thought about for other books and just see what happens day to day and introduce more characters as she goes wandering around London. So I love the setting and I enjoy her voice. And it's a really light, easy read, but I'm not sure yet if I'm loving it as much as others have loved it, but there's still a fair way to go. So that's the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. Now a book I'm going to read with my cousin Jeff in London, and his suggestion, which has become this huge hit from Book Talk and Bookstagram, is White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and my edition is translated by Ronald Mayer, and I have not read this before. This is a very slim book that is a romance about, I think, a couple who meet on the street in St. Petersburg, and it goes on from there. I haven't started it yet, but it's only very small, so it won't take long. I love a handbag-sized book. So this will be fun to read, and Jeff and I are going to talk about it for the podcast. So stay tuned. Let me know if you've been swept up in the Book Talk craze for White Nights. The next one I'm doing for the Adelaide Writers' Week Book Club, and that is Helen Garner, The Season. So I can't wait for this. Helen Garner is an iconic Australian author. She's so clever, so incisive, a really interesting and thoughtful commentator on books as well, and has also released her diaries and, has written really interesting, strong non-fiction. But this, I think, is a novel. It's footy season in Melbourne. Oh no, maybe it's a memoir. It's footy season in Melbourne, and Helen Garner is following her grandson's under-16s team. She goes to every game, every training session, fascinated by the spectacle. She's a passionate Western Bulldogs fan who loves the epic theatre of AFL football. But her devotion to the under-16s offers her something else, a chance to connect with her grandchild. And so it is a memoir. It's a non-fiction by the sound of it, but I love her non-fiction, so that only draws me in more. I'll let you know how I go and how it goes with the book club. That's The Season. And then this was influenced by Rory Stewart at The Rest Is Politics podcast, UK, The Material World, A Substantial Story of Our Past and Future by Ed Conway, which is all about salt, copper, oil, lithium, iron and sand, the materials that have built our world. And it's really fascinating. I won't say any more. I'm a bit of the way through. I highly, highly recommend it. It is so interesting. It gives you both a history of some of the key things that have been traded in the world, which affects geopolitics, but also it's current as well. So things like silicon, making silicon chips and things like that, it covers. So really fascinating. And then I received, and very excited to receive, the new Haruki Murakami, The City and Its Uncertain Walls, translated by Gabriel. And I love Haruki Murakami. He is problematic. I think he's a bit sexist, and in some of his books the women are sort of objectified and they're just treated as objects, but I still go back to him. I'm interested in what you think, if you're a fan or if you think he's a bit dated now, I don't know. But every time I go back to one of his novels in particular, I didn't get along with first person singular, some of the short stories, but I'm just reminded, well, not that I can always articulate it why, but why I love his work. So The City and Its Uncertain Walls. And lastly, but not least, The Husbands by Gramazio, which I'm really looking forward to, a fun read. And the premise is the protagonist, Lauren, finds a strange man in her house. It turns out he's her husband, and in fact her attic is filled with husbands. So every time she goes up there, there's a new husband, and then she has to decide how to get rid of one, and the new one comes along when she does. So a really fun premise, and I've heard great things about this. So that is The Husbands, and that is the book haul. Let me know what you've been reading, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.